The European Union and China have called for preserving the Iran nuclear deal on the 5th anniversary of signing the international accord. That is known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or the JCPOA. The EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said the full implementation of the JCPOA by all sides remains crucial. Borrell said that he will do everything possible to keep the agreement alive. China also reiterated its support for the deal, calling it an important outcome of multilateral diplomacy. The Foreign Ministry spokeswoman said Beijing believes that preserving the JCPOA is the right way to resolve the controversy over the Iranian nuclear program. Hua Chunying also blasted the U.S. for unilaterally pulling out of the JCPOA, which was endorsed by a Security Council resolution.
Unfortunately, the U.S. has in recent years been upholding unilateralism, renouncing its international obligations, and withdrawing from treaties and organizations. It withdrew from the JCPOA in May 2018 and thwarted in every means other parties' implementation of the agreement. Such clear violation of the UNSC Resolution 2231 has led to continued tension over the Iranian nuclear issue.
The Chinese official also lashed out at the U.S. for seeking to end a UN arms embargo set to end in October under the JCPOA. She urged the international community to jointly oppose the U.S. efforts to keep the anti-Iran embargo in place. Iran's foreign ministry also issued a statement. It said the U.S. is trying to further undermine the nuclear deal by pushing to extend the arms embargo. Given that this is the 5th anniversary of this JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, we're going to break it down with a couple of our guests right now. Heinz Gartner is a political scientist, International Institute for Peace, who joins us from Vienna. We also have Marcus Papadopoulos, publisher and editor at Politics First, who joins us from London. I'd like to welcome you both. Let me first start with you, Heinz, over in Vienna. We're looking at the 5th anniversary, and just today the EU Foreign Policy Chief has come out saying the preservation of the nuclear deal is more important than ever. How would you evaluate the performance of the EU when it comes to the Iran nuclear deal?
The statement by Borrell is a late awakening of the European Union to recognize that the JCPOA is the best arms control agreement in history, with a very comprehensive verification system. So they might not get anything better. For too long they have yielded the pressure by President Trump, and they tried to please him. So they did not support enough the JCPOA, and also they were afraid of the secondary sanctions. So now basically it's a time for the European Union that they bolster the index mechanism, which bypasses US secondary sanctions, and some transactions have been made, but more is possible. That would be one step the European Union could do to draw the consequences of the statement of Borrell that the JCPOA is more important than ever. That means to support it and to keeping it alive is more important than ever also.
Well, Marcus Papadopoulos, this somewhat coincides with news that Iran and China might be inking a deal, a 25-year roadmap, which would involve business, military intelligence, etc. Do you think that Iran's strategy has changed as looking to the West in terms of maybe doing trade and now moving its strategy towards the East with countries like China and perhaps other countries that Iran may move forward in striking a deal, a big deal, like countries like Russia, maybe India, etc.?
Well, allow me to say this. The JC land indeed takes deal to usher in a degree of peace and stability in the Middle East, a region which is, after all, the most volatile in the world. And I applaud the Iranian government for having fully complied with the requirements set out under the JCPOA for the last 5 years. And I also admire the admirable stance of the Europeans. Yes, the Europeans could have done more, but we have to recognize that the Europeans are not truly independent. After all, Germany and France are strategic friends and allies of America, and Britain is a vassal state of America. But nonetheless, the Europeans a few months ago introduced the Instex trading system, which did a great deal to strengthen the JCPOA. But the problem we are facing with the JCPOA is not the agreement per se, but it is the Trump administration's incessant attitude to try and break the deal, to try and scupper the deal. And in regard to Iran's relations with countries such as China, I understand why Iran is very hesitant about wanting to conclude future agreements with Western countries, because we see America as being one of the most notorious countries in the world when it comes to withdrawing from agreements it's signed up to, not just the JCPOA, but also the ABM Treaty, the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, and also the Open Skies Agreement that America signed with Russia and Belarus. So I believe that Iran is very hesitant about future agreements with the West because America has a great deal of leverage in Europe. And even though the Europeans do want to trade with Iran, they do want to invest in Iran, ultimately the Americans are blackmailing them. And faced with the Iranian market or the American market, which has 300 million people, the Europeans will have to relent and opt to trade with the American market. So I do believe that China offers a very, very good, lucrative set of deals, potential deals for Iran. And as I said, I completely understand Tehran's apprehension about signing future agreements with Western countries, because those Western countries are beholden to America.
Well, Heinz Gartner, your title here as a political scientist for the International Institute for Peace, in that capacity, can you tell us whether the U.S. withdrawal from this landmark deal that was 13 years in the making practically, if not maybe even longer in terms of the preparation for it, which it was then finalized with the P5+1, what was known as the P5+1 group. Do you think the U.S. pullout has actually added to the world insecurity and instability by their withdrawal and some of the actions that they partook in afterwards, which obviously, in some respects, many say provoked Iran?
Should I respond?
Yes.
Sure. We have seen after the withdrawal of President Trump from the JCPOA, we have seen all kinds of incidents in the Persian Gulf, which they are hard to attribute. But they happened only after Trump withdrew. So that's a proof that the JCPOA was a factor of stability also in the region. It's not just an arms control agreement. It would go beyond it. And also there were many hopes attached to it, and the European Union hoped for investment and trade. And that's why the European Union actually thought that JCPOA would also help them. And the Obama administration, for the Obama administration, it was an example of engagement policy. So the European Union thought it was a masterpiece of effective multilateralism. So, and all this was in the danger to break down when President Trump withdrew. Now we have the situation that the European Union and the Europeans find out that it would bring back stability. And there is a little chance when another president will be in the White House. Joseph Biden has promised to return to the JCPOA when he would be elected, which is a little sign of hope. But the condition is, of course, also that the Iranians now return to their commitments in the JCPOA as well. in order to help Biden to come back to the agreement. So the tensions will not disappear. However, it is a chance, first of all, that the JCPOA will be saved, and second, that there will return some stability to the Persian Gulf region.
And Marcus Papadopoulos, if we were to take a look at that scenario, were it to happen, and even if Iran was interested, do you think that it's a little too late, even if were Trump to be defeated and Joe Biden to enter the picture, do you think that Iran has an appetite to ink a deal with the U.S., even though they have a new president, given the fact that one of the worst things could have happened, and that was the fact that you have one of the most revered Iranian lieutenant generals who was assassinated by the U.S., which obviously that is still fresh in the mouths of politicians, officials here in Iran?
Well, I hold the view that it doesn't actually matter who sits in the White House, because in America, and also it is the case in Britain, there is a unseen permanent government, and we can call that the deep state, though for me the term deep state has Ottoman connotations. I prefer to use the term establishment or the elite. And these people, the people who comprise the American establishment, they are the ones who truly hold the reins of power in America, domestically and also in terms of American foreign policy. And I believe that the vast majority of the people who comprise the American establishment are inherently hostile towards Iran. And I believe that even if someone was to enter the White House who was somewhat more open-minded when it comes to Iran, ultimately the machines of the American government will come around that person and they will dictate to them what the policy will be when it comes to Iran and how that policy will be carried out. And we must not think that Joe Biden is going to be the savior, because we heard how Trump would be a savior. He would reverse aggressive American foreign policy objectives. We heard the same about Barack Obama, that he would be a savior for America, and under him there would be a new American foreign policy. Well, Obama and Trump have proved themselves to be no different to their predecessors. Why? Because American foreign policy is set and is pursued by the American establishment, many of whom you will not read about in newspapers, you will never see on television. So I do not believe that if Joe Biden was to become president this year, or if he was to enter the White House at the beginning of 2021, that he would necessarily say that he wants to return America to the JCPOA. Because, number one, as I said, the machines of the American government would have already surrounded him, and they would dictate to him what the policy will be towards the Iran nuclear agreement. And secondly, Joe Biden has very, very close relations with Saudi Arabia and Israel. And Saudi Arabia and Israel are two of America's most important, most valued, most significant of friends and allies in the world. And the Saudis and the Israelis, of course, do not want America to return to the JCPOA. So we must not think that if Trump is to be replaced as president at this November's American presidential election, that his successor will have a different approach to the JCPOA. That's simply fanciful thinking. There is no concrete evidence to support that.
Okay, we're going to unfortunately have to leave it there. Let me thank our guests. Heinz Gartner, political scientist at International Institute for Peace. Thank you for your comments. And also Marcus Papadopoulos, publisher and editor at Politics First. Thank you for your comments also.